What is up, party people? It's Keys Dan with RadioWhat.com, DJLittleRock.com, coming to you live and in living color from the Radio What studio. And this is my podcast, What Makes You Famous. It's an extension of the RadioWhat.com internet radio station that I've been running for quite some time. And if you need DJ services, where do you go? DJLittleRock.com. Check availability and get a free price quote. And maybe you could have me. Oh yeah, I like to play for the people at your next event. You know, I like weddings and parties of all kinds. Video dance party karaoke jams have been what's going on lately. If you'd like to tell your story, I encourage you to check out my other podcast, What Makes You Famous. Find it everywhere using the hashtag What Makes You Famous. Now, on with the show. Today on the program, the history of the Farmers Almanac. Weather can change quickly, which is why, as many meteorologists will tell you, it is difficult to make forecasts, even on a weekly basis. Somehow, though, the Farmers Almanac has been making long-range weather predictions months in advance for hundreds of years. The accuracy of these forecasts is far from perfect, and the science behind them is largely a mystery. But more than 2 centuries in, the Farmer's Almanac remains a popular resource for both entertainment and advice. Here's a brief overview of its history. A tale of 2 almanacs. Most people refer to the Farmer's Almanac as if there's only one, but there are actually 2 different versions still in publication. Farmer's Almanac and the Old Farmers Almanac. The former also produces an annual Canadian edition. Oh, Canada! They are similar in that they offer yearly weather predictions, along with fun facts, stories, recipes, humor, and other practical recommendations, but they differ in the way they make those predictions. The Old Farmer's Almanac relies on a mix of solar science, prevailing weather patterns, and a study of the atmosphere, while the Farmer's Almanac uses solar science, lunar tidal action, and planetary position. Both almanacs largely keep their exact processes and formulas a secret. Shh. So only a few people really know how they do what they do. Let's take a look at the Old Farmer's Almanac. The Old Farmer's Almanac, which in fact is the older of the 2 almanacs, debuting during George Washington's first term in 1792, which makes it the oldest continuously published periodical in the United States. Of course, it wasn't considered old back then. Originally, the almanac was just called the Farmer's Almanac. It didn't add the old until its 56th birthday in 1848, under its second editor, John H. Jenks. Its first and founding editor, Robert B. Thomas, started the business in Dublin, New Hampshire. At the time, there was a fierce competition in the almanac industry, but Thomas's product quickly gained a following. What made the Old Farmer's Almanac stand out from the rest was its useful advice, entertaining humor, and of course, its uncanny predictions. Historically, the Old Farmer's Almanac has claimed 80% accuracy with its forecasts, which are made 18 months in advance. Today, the almanac is still produced in Dublin, New Hampshire. During its 228-year existence, it has had 13 editors, most recently Janice Stillman, the first female editor of the publication. What about the new Farmer's Almanac? I'm getting to that. It's just known as the Farmer's Almanac. The Old Farmer's Almanac saw its first real rival in 1818, when the premier issue of Farmer's Almanac was published in Morristown, New Jersey. Like the older almanac, the newer Farmer's Almanac offered useful advice, humor, and weather prediction. Also, like its predecessor, it keeps its forecasting formula a closely guarded secret. Shh. It even uses a pseudonym, Caleb Weatherby, for its real-life weather prognosticators. To date, 7 editors have presided over Farmers Almanac. The first was poet, astronomer, and teacher David Young. The most recent is Peter Geiger, son of former editor Ray Geiger. Ray edited the almanac from 1933 to 1994, during which time he increased circulation by several million and moved the company's headquarters from New Jersey to Maine. Currently, 3 different versions of Farmers Almanac are published throughout North America. There is the standard retail version that you can find in supermarkets and bookstores. There's a promotional version to help companies market their products or services. And there's a Canadian version that has weather predictions and articles specific to Canada. Oh, Canada! Of course, you can also find content on the Farmers Almanac website. But is it accurate? Is it accurate? Meteorological accuracy. Both Farmers Almanac and the Old Farmers Almanac rely on secret formulas centered around solar activity, specifically sunspots, to generate their predictions. They've claimed 80% accuracy in the past, but that number has been disputed by the scientific community. According to a study at the University of Illinois, the Old Farmers Almanac is really 51.9% accurate, with precipitation forecast, and 50.7% accurate with monthly temperature estimates. Its accuracy is generally chalked up to chance, although devoted fans might argue otherwise. This may be due in some part to confirmation bias. When the almanacs are right, people find it incredible. When they're wrong, people forget. Still, it's pretty fun to read. Despite scrutiny from the scientific community regarding the accuracy of the forecast, the Old Farmers Almanac and the newer Farmers Almanac still appeal to a wide audience because of the practical information and fun articles that fill every page of their annual editions. Even if their weather predictions fall short sometimes, it's helpful to have resources like a general planting calendar, meteor shower guides, and fishing tips written in an easy-to-read, entertaining format. Original publisher Robert B. Thomas probably put it best when he said, quote, "Our main endeavor is to be useful, but with a pleasant degree of humor." End quote. That's been the key to success for both almanacs for more than 200 years and counting. That's a little bit about the Farmers Almanac and the Old Farmers Almanac. This has been What Makes You Smarter. If you'd like to tell your story, I encourage you to check out my other podcast, What Makes You Famous. Find it everywhere using the hashtag What Makes You Famous. That's it for me. It's Keys Dan, RadioWhat.com, DJLittleRock.com. Peace. I'm out of here. If you like what you hear, I encourage you to follow What Makes You Smarter on social media. Find it on Facebook at What Makes You Smarter, Instagram at What Makes You Smarter, Twitter at SmarterWhat, and YouTube, username Keys Dan. Leave What Makes You Smarter podcast a review and subscribe. Listen to What Makes You Smarter podcast on Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, and Podcast Addict. My personal favorite, learn with me on my podcast, What Makes You Smarter. And if you'd like to tell your story, I encourage you to check out my other podcast, What Makes You Famous. Find it everywhere using the hashtag What Makes You Famous. Call 501-470-6386 and leave a message to set up a time for What Makes You Famous. Support What Makes You Smarter podcast using the PayPal, paypal.me radio.com/KeysDan. Email info@radiowhat.com. What Makes You Smarter is a production of Keys Dan Enterprises Incorporated at keysdan.com. Thank you for listening.